Welcome back, everyone. So we are 2/3 of the way through this first day of our second edition of WFS Live. Just a reminder, if you're having a little nose around the Swap Card platform, you might have seen the expo area there. Do go have a look. We've got some fantastic exhibitors there who deserve a little bit of your time and attention. Have a look and see what they're all about. Of course, we are the event where the football industry meets, as we say it. So please do go and have a look. And also, of course, we welcome your interaction. We will try and get to your questions, and please do get involved with our polls here on the Swapcard platform as we go through roundtable by roundtable. And our next port of call is a roundtable called Football Fans and Sponsorship in the Decade of Action, Shifting the Perspective from Consumers to Global Citizens. Those last four words are kind of the most prescient, aren't they? The most telling, the most operative that we're going to be focusing on. For many businesses, I suppose the abbreviation CSR has often been considered maybe a bit of a box-ticking exercise. Corporate social responsibility, always seen, I suppose, to be important for a brand's PR, for them to be seen to be doing the right thing. Sometimes quite brazenly, I suppose you could just say that they're not chasing pounds or dollars or euros or yen. They want to make their brand fluffier and warmer and more attractive and friendlier. But these days, consumers, quite simply people, hold those brands to account more. They've got the tech and the tools at their disposal to express their opinion more on the matter as well. How socially responsible are brands? How purpose-driven are they? That's an interesting phrase that we're hearing a little bit more now. If you're a brand, could that actually be a pivotal factor in encouraging business or maybe driving away business? And in fact, if you're a brand and you do pivot to focus more on, say, social impact, could that actually prove to be quite smart business-wise and a new way to gain business rather than a distraction from the current methods you have? In the decade of action in the world of football, it certainly could be. Let's get some further insights in this panel, brought to you in collaboration with Common Goal. We have a cracking quintet of speakers for you. The head of corporate sponsorship at Barco Santander, Enrique Queixo. We have Head of Sports Entertainment Marketing Partnerships at Google, Kate Johnson. Vice President of Global Strategic Relations at Salesforce, Charlotte Kirby. EVP Branding Community at Los Angeles Football Club, Rich Orosco. CEO and co-founder at Sports Innovation Lab, Angela Ruggiero. There they are, patiently waiting for me, along with your moderator for this session, Managing Partner at Jung Matt, Robert Zitzmann. Robert, an incredibly important topic you're going to be discussing here. Over to you.
Thank you so much, David. It could not have had a better intro, taking it from here. And I think enough said about the subject, the context for today. A mini intro already on our fabulous lineup today. And we would love to start with, let's say, a little warm up, or as I would say, a speed dating session with our wonderful panelists today, and giving a little intro on themselves and what they do, and maybe a glimpse on or an idea on a purpose-led moment in their career in sports that has shaped their perspective on the subject today. So let's start with Angela. You take it away, and then we go one time around the block.
Yeah, thank you, Robert. So I started a company called Sports Innovation Lab. We are a market research company looking at the future of sports. Do you guys hear that beeping? You're okay? All right, someone go next. Yeah. I think it's my fire alarm. Oh, sorry, apologies.
Okay, take it. Or maybe Kate, you go next. Yeah.
All right. I can take that one from Angela. She's an old friend. Fire alarms be damned. So I'm actually 10 months into my role at Google, and at Google we call that a noogler. So I am still definitely learning the lay of the land over here. But really, in a nutshell, I was brought over after a 7-year career at Visa, leading global partnership marketing at Visa, to really frankly build brand and integrated marketing partnership muscle around how Google kind of shows up in the sports ecosystem with a more concentrated strategic voice. So really looking across what are many products that serve billions of people to figure out what is our role in sport, and how do we kind of link our efforts together versus come at that kind of one at a time in all instances. And I guess from a pivotal moment for me, I'm an Olympian. So, my passion for sport has always been a part of it. But I would say the Women's World Cup last summer for me, as it relates to football, was definitely the banner headline for me as far as things I've worked on that I'm most proud of. So
amazing. Thank you. Charlotte, you go next, please.
So thanks, Robert. So at Salesforce, we have a belief that the business of business is to improve the state of the world. And I have an amazing job leading our strategic relationships globally with values-based organizations who support and assist and we work with in making that come true. For me, not being primarily involved in the world of sport, but actually getting involved when we see sport and the power that it has to galvanize our communities. One of the pivotal moments for me, really underlining the power that sport can play, is being in a school in the middle of the slums in the Kibagari in Nairobi and seeing one of my colleagues present a football and teach a games class to a student cohort of girls for the very first time. It was their first football, their first ever game session, and their first realization that sport was actually for them as well. And seeing the look on their faces, that just, it makes the day worthwhile.
Amazing. Thank you so much for the intro. Enrique, maybe you go next and give us an idea about your role and about your role model, maybe.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Enrique Geijo. I'm a sponsorship director at Banco Santander. It's a pleasure to share panel with all of you today with this with the interesting title of the panel. Luckily nowadays we can say that there are many fantastic sports initiatives with social impact. No, lots of them and very good ones. In my role at Santander, I'm especially proud and without wanting to be arrogant about what we do around football. That is what we call the strategy, what we call football can. That it is try to take advantage of football, so to have a positive impact of the football in society. So this is what we do in Santander around football sponsorships.
That's great. We'll hear some more about that later on when we dig a bit deeper on the aspect of sponsors, especially also from your point of view in sports with all the flagship assets that you guys cover. And please, last but not least, before we give another try with Angela Rich, please tell us a little bit on Sunshine State and your state of mind.
Yes. Thank you, Robert. I'm the Executive Vice President of Branding Community at LAFC. It's the traditional marketing department, and I was lucky enough to be there. I think I was number 7 in at the club with a crazy dream to launch a new sports team in Los Angeles with the global game. Very, very fortunate with that. So we're very excited to share that story today. For me, I had a long background in entertainment marketing and television marketing and about 7 years of startups. So to be able to combine startup experience with the world's game in LA has been an honor. And as far as purpose-driven, my short story is I was led to the club. I co-founded a youth leadership program in 2012 in South LA, which is South Central LA, one of the roughest neighborhoods still in the United States. And we called that program LAFC. That was in 2012. And it was that program teaching job skills and life skills through sport that actually led me to the ownership group at LAFC 2 years later in 2014. So I'm excited to be on in this conversation because purpose led me to where I am today, and I think it's driving our club.
Brilliant. So back to Boston, back to Angela. How is the fire alarm doing?
Sorry,
are you
everyone.
okay?
The joys of working from home. The fire's okay. I think it was just cooking, some burnt cooking. So my company, again, Sports Innovation Lab, we look at the future fan and really look in about how technology is driving fandom and how businesses across the sports ecosystems should evolve their models, adopt more technology and data to better service that future fan. So we're all about the fan experience. My background, like Kate, I was a 4-time Olympian in ice hockey, and so have a lot of Olympic experience. But my moment, I think if I had to pick one most recently, was at the Pyeongchang Olympics. I was a member of the International Olympic Committee for 8 years and got to be in the locker room with the North and South Korean ice hockey team in Pyeongchang. They came together under one flag, one jersey, played unified, and the message that's sent to the rest of the world, I think, was so profound to me in those Olympics, of what the power of sport can do across society. And so seeing that team play together, again, countries that are at war being able to actually literally play on the same hockey team together was a pretty amazing moment for me in Pyeongchang.
Okay. Wow. Yeah, fantastic. Thank you guys so much for the warm up, and give everybody a feel who they are watching, following, and listening to for the next 40 minutes. Yeah, maybe Charlotte, let's start with you. I learned before that you are not a diehard football fan. You still made it on in the motherlands of football. You're a rugby fan. But nonetheless, which is even greater that you're here with your role at Salesforce and your responsibility for the, let's say, business partnerships with value-based organizations such as the UN. And what can you tell us, and what can you give as an idea to the audience? How can we perceive also CSR as also was mentioned in the intro, and purpose-driven marketing and communications can actually become a business KPI for companies, so we can build a bridge between purpose and performance. What would you give us as an idea on that, and give us a little bit more depth? Yeah.
Yeah. So first of all, I deeply apologise for being a rugby fan. I'm sorry about that. And I think David alluded to some of this when he did the introduction, that it's CSR no longer can be a tick box exercise on an annual report. I've heard so many people say things like, well, you can't just paint a fence and call that giving back. You can't just put your name on a football shirt or a rugby shirt or whatever type of shirt and say that, that is part of your philanthropic giving. Society has moved on from that. And I think there's 4 key points that I would like to start the conversation off with. The first one is, what is the role of business and how is that changing at the moment? We're entering a new moment in time, which is called the stakeholder economy. What that means is that it's no longer just about an economic return that creates value for the business. Actually, it's societal return as well. And that, as you build the value of your brand, as you build the value of your company for yourself, your consumers, and your stakeholders, it has to be more than just financially driven. Which brings me to the second point. Who actually are the consumers? We're talking about the shift to global citizens. We're starting to see that because this is the era of stakeholder economy, that actually consumers are already making that shift to be global citizens. So the question is, how do you as a business not get left behind? Because when you think that 87% of consumers will only trust a company that is socially conscious, and that 75% of consumers believe that companies, and bearing in mind that football teams can be classed as a company, 75% of consumers believe that companies are responsible for giving back to their communities. And thirdly, there is a $12 trillion ticket associated with us achieving the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So this balance of humankind and environment along with economic return actually is not the right thing to do just to be socially conscious. It's the right thing to do for a values-based company. And then we'll go back to the word community. 90% or so of clubs are grassroots clubs. If 75% of the consumers are believing that business has to give back to the communities, that's an onus on grassroots sports clubs, because they are at the heart of many of the communities. And then finally, there's the role of partnerships in all of this. How do we come together as a society between business, between clubs, between the consumers to make the impact that we're seeing that's needed? companies want the exposure, but in the same way, they don't just want to be a check anymore to a nonprofit. They want to be involved in how to utilize and leverage that exposure to make the world a better place. And that brings us back to the first point, which is the stakeholder economy. So it's becoming a sustainable cycle of all involved wanting to give value and do good.
Thank you so much, Charlotte. And if we take this forward and if we consider the fan, the audience, the end consumer part of the stakeholder group, this very complex stakeholder group that sport offers, handing over to you, Angela. You have, besides being, you don't mind me saying, a very famous Olympian and a Hall of Famer, I think with your company, you have successfully grown a business that through technology connects the different parties in sports and builds bridges. If we look at taking the title of this panel today and from consumer to citizen, what could you say? And I've been very excited about your podcast, the Fluid Fan, the format you have. Can you give us a little idea on how can sports properties and sponsors try to segment and analyze fans and get a better understanding of who we're actually talking about? Because this is quite a heavy shift from looking just at fans consuming sports towards the wider picture. Would be very happy to understand a bit more on that.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, there's been a massive shift from local fandom, where you cheer for your local club team, to global fandom, which we all understand well. With technology, you can distribute content. There can be teams all over the world. You can easily get on a plane and be a fan, a global citizen, a global fan, to what we call fluid fandom, where your fans are actually more elusive, more fickle. You need to do more to service them. And in today's changing world, where technology enables them to have choice, enables fans to, vote with their wallets, in the attention economy, these future fans, we call them fluid fans, expect more from the brands and the properties. They're consumers at the end of the day. So I think everything Charlotte just laid out, just fans aren't separate from consumers. Consumers literally do think and act differently. So this fluid fan, we've argued, this isn't the diehard that passes their tickets from generation to generation and has a tattoo of their football club on their arm and will do anything even if you underservice them. This is this new consumer that expects more and demands more. You have to think about them in a different way and appease them. So whether that's upgrading your concessions or upgrading the technology platforms that they use so that you go to them as opposed to always expecting them to come to you. You just have this in this economy when these fluid fans want they just need more, I guess, at the bottom of the day. They're constantly evolving. So the properties, the brands, the sponsors, everyone in the ecosystem of sports media and entertainment understands this. They're going to do more. They're going to invest differently. And when we take it to this conversation, one key component of a fluid fan is that they vote with their values, right? So if you misalign with their values, whether it's all the safety measures for athletes that you're not looking at, whether it's social injustice you're not addressing, whether it's gender inequality, there's a whole list of things that, again, if you're not treating your employees well, the workforce that's building your venue, there's a misalignment, and these fluid fans, these more fickle fans, may not buy your ticket, may not watch your content, may disassociate with you. Maybe they just align with the athlete and not the property itself. But those that get it right, I think Forest Green Rovers, they're an eco-friendly, they're known as the most eco-friendly football club. I'm sure you guys know about them. Fans will literally don't care about football, but they will consume that content. They will be a fan of that. And so if you take it, again, for gender, which I'm obviously personally passionate about, I believe the business case is already there for women's sports. Yes, it's the right thing to do. Like, I don't even want to have that conversation anymore. Now it's about, okay, if we understand there's a market out there and women are underserved, how do we do it well and align with those consumers these fluid fans that vote with their values, there's a massive value prop that's, I think, underserved right now. And again, fans are changing, and we have to get with the times, to be honest. And if you want the whole market, they're sitting there. What can we do to capture that market? It's called shared value. If anyone has ever heard of Michael Porter, a very famous HBS professor, Harvard Business School, that's the story. There's value for the property, and there's also value, obviously, in doing the right thing.
That's amazing. Thank you for also opening so many boxes. And if I take this over to Kate, even though you and Angela, you know each other, and as I know, you guys have a great relationship, but can you take on the concept of the fluid fan, and with your background also working on the global blockbuster and rather traditional assets, the FIFA World Cup, the Olympics, from a Visa point of view, and now with your role at Google, can you tell us that the data you have access to now, and that what you have experienced in the industry before, that this concept is already understood? And a second question already weaving into your answer, your response, is how can data actually help us to understand the fan better, and what advice could you give us on that?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, taking from what Angela said and Charlotte as well, my head goes to a number of things. I think first and foremost, what we're talking about in terms of the expectation of these companies. Now, I'm working at a company who is solving real time for some of the world's biggest problems, right? How do we bring internet to Kenya via the Loon Balloon? How our accessibilities team presented last week in our corporate all hands, they're solving for mobility. So what I'm trying to do at Google is really connect the dots between the work we're already doing. And I look at the marketing world and the partnership world through really the lens of three things. One is, what are our products real time able to solve for? What are the biases we're really able to solve for? So when you search for a footballer, are you fed only the top 10 male footballers, or is there going to be a balance in making sure that there's not an assumption that you were looking for a male footballer necessarily? As a marketing-led organization who spends considerably in sport, what are we saying when we put our brand into those communications? And then certainly as a media company as well, how are we solving for a lot of the distribution innovations that fans are expecting now? And I think what's been fascinating, and a lot of the work actually that the Sports Innovation Lab and ourselves have done too, is we've looked at the behaviors that have changed coming out of COVID. I mean, I think COVID has been a fascinating accelerant of, what were emerging trends into these innovations today that fans are coming to expect in terms of how they want content. What Google can do uniquely is we can see how fans are engaging in a very different way. It's less about the avid fan, and it's more about, when we look at trends data uniquely, how is the fan actually engaging around the moment that they're watching? So when, and I'll take a U.S. example, but or even a football example. Many of these athletes are just icons, right? When Messi walks onto the pitch, people aren't just searching for, how he's going to play the game. They care about what he was wearing at the red carpet event last week. They care about what music he's listening to on his headphones, which for me is far more interesting, because that's what I think sports leagues and teams should be thinking about, is how do I engage this much broader fandom, this much broader audience that cares about a lot more than just the stats and specifics of the actual performance itself. And when you think about just, sports' role at the center of culture, that's where I think that conversation gets uniquely fascinating. And so what I'm hoping to do is really connect the dots between certainly the product work that, Google is already doing to solve for some of, sports and the world's biggest problems, but also bring that together in these kind of integrated marketing partnerships that help us tell a unique story, and I call it the show and the tell, right? Making sure that we're really showing how our products are solving for real-time solutions, how our trends are identifying new fandoms, and then, telling a unique story around those things that only Google can tell.
Thank you so much. Talking about is to be told, and talking about the why football is such a powerful platform for brands. Maybe, Enrique, you being responsible for the sponsorship at Banco Santander, and as said before, with the UCL, the Champions League, La Liga, the Copa Libertadores, you guys have a massive heritage in sponsoring football. for many years. And can you give us an idea why this is for a company like yours that has a very obviously a very wide target group to be met? Football is so key. And can you give us an idea on what tactics you can recommend in doing so, and also connecting again, with the aspect that we started off as listening to Charlotte on connecting purpose and performance, and how this has evolved for your business tactically?
Okay, thank you, Robert. Well, apologize because my English is not as good as Kate, Charlotte, or Angela. So at Santander, we believe that football, the sport as a message booster. So sometimes, we need to link to the sport in able to amplify the messages that we want to communicate, So for us, sponsorship are the ideal platform in order to communicate the brand purpose, in that case, the Santander brand's purpose. So, when we say that our purpose is to help to people and business prosper, we think that in a way, football has also this capacity, We think that all that is around football can always enable also to people improve their lives. So this is the main reason why we say that this strategy around football that is called Football Can, the positive impact of people in society. So we take advantage of football to deliver some messages. And we say at Santander, what we say is that if at any time we end the football sponsorships, our aim or our objective is going to be to have been able to deliver a legacy on our pass through football. So this is why each year we try to do activations and to use the sponsorship to try to deliver this impact, this positive impact on society. I wouldn't say, I am not anyone to say how to do it. I think that lots of brands try to link in sport because all this audience is there. So when we focus in football, we don't want to target. We want to target every fan, but I think that the core fans are already there. So I think that football has touches other targets that are very interesting for us, to communicate our messages.
Okay, thank you very much, Enrique. I bet there's lots of more stories to be told when digging into your history of working with and through football, and leveraging football as a platform for corporate messaging, and also supporting football in with additional messages that you guys share that maybe football is not capable of delivering. Rich, over to you. You have played a vital role in the setup, and as we learned, and also in the evolution, in the birth of Los Angeles Football Club, and then in the growth over the last years. And from what I can see from the outside, I believe you guys did not just do a very good job on coming up with a very strong brand and a very successful business, but also you guys went, especially if we compared with other American, US team sports franchises, a new pathway in developing the company. And I think culture plays a key role in that. Can you give us an idea on what your definition of culture is, and how that has been helping your club, all the marketing programs that you guys have set up, the commercialization, the community building, in going beyond the traditional sports fan approach?
Yeah, we had a Mission Impossible type of challenge to launch a new sports team in LA. There was already another club here for 25 years. There was a failed club that folded in 2014, and we have globally known teams here, from the Lakers to the Dodgers, etc. So the traditional launch and marketing headspace was, what is my budget? What's our billboard campaign? And let's cross our fingers that we win on the field. And those of us who know that are not actually kicking a ball and contributing to victories, we don't have control over that. So what, for us, culture was, what do we stand for as an organization early? And I think those of us who've been in startups, it's really tough to roll your sleeves up and commit to what your identity is on day one, and then stick with it and be consistent. So for us, our purpose from day one, as I was there when there was 7 of us, is to unite the world city through the world's game, and we all understand the power of football. Number 2 is to bring joy, and that's a filter for us as we make decisions. You know, at a sports team, we can get too busy, and you know, Kate might email me about her cousin's birthday and getting a video, and we all kind of get wrapped up in scale and not about this one-by-one approach. And so we wanted to create a part of our identity for everybody in our organization to try to say yes more than to create joy and to bring joy to people. And then lastly is to be a force for good. In LA, and I'm sure in many other markets, if you ask somebody in your city what sports team or club does the most good, very rarely will you get a unanimous answer. And that I experienced that personally in LA. Nobody had a quick answer. I think the Dodgers are closest to a cultural icon in our city. And we felt like with a club, meaning a community, we felt like that would be a really important part of our identity to differentiate us in the market and to really put deep roots, is to be a force for good. What that means is consistent and a smaller number of programs with real impact and consistency. It didn't mean 1,000 football clinics, pass out 1,000 water bottles, and then call it a day, and then look at our billboard and again cross our fingers that we'd penetrate in a global market like LA. So culture for us is what do we stand for, and what is the movement we're creating, and if you follow us, this is what we're all doing together, and that's why we created our purpose, to be clear about that. And you know, thankfully, 3 years in, we've sold out every single home match. I think we've created a phenomenon in the city. Our goal right now is to become the next cultural icon in LA, which is crazy talk 3 years ago. We're only 3 years old, and I believe that we're on our way doing that. And if you've ever been to a match, you could feel it. It's very tactile, and I think that the key to that was our culture and being very clear.
Brilliant. Yeah. So I believe what we can also learn here, that the different cultures in a globalized world can also be of inspiration and can definitely help when also understanding the different opportunities of storytelling and connecting with a wider audience and from LA into the world. I think that's going to be exciting to be following that over the next years and taking the aspect of storytelling forward. Kate, if I may, you have started to dive into something very, very interesting, how data is, trying to show the interests and all the tendencies of fans, what they follow, what they care about. And if we look at sports and the amount of documentaries that we see, the amount of long form content that is around the web, and everything going beyond the actual, the sports event, the match days, the events, do you feel that through the lens of data that you guys have, that also storytelling must evolve from what it is today in sports?
You answered the question. Absolutely, storytelling needs to evolve, and the reason why is because the fan is so different. Like, I do believe that the way we, brands traditionally, and certainly leagues and federations and teams themselves have talked to fans, has been through the avid fan lens versus the fan that might be on the outskirts, that might only be in it for, sneakerdom, or might only be in it for the historical elements of what that sport means, from a deep level, like, what football means to them from a familial point of view. And I think what we can see across certainly through search trends, but in other ways too, is we can see how people connect to food, as an example, around sporting moments. We can see how, certainly how their behaviors are driven from a commerce perspective. And I think when you get into the storytelling of it, there's such a rich territory to actually expand that footprint of who the fan is. So how can we create documentaries and pieces of content that speak to younger people who maybe only care about the fashion of sport? Or how do we create content that ties back to, I'll give you an example. Through search data, we can tell where somebody is near, both how they're, how they're searching for maybe their favorite team, but then additionally what city they're in while they're searching as they go through maps. And so can we, send them a note that basically is, pushes them to a local football club near them to join? The amount of data that we can get down to is obviously very regulated. And so we pull it above the line into these high level storytelling opportunities, I think, instead, which is such a rich territory to play in.
Amazing. Angela, I had the feeling you were about to chip in, but if not, I have another question for you I think we like going further from the fluid fan, and you mentioned a couple of aspects to that of how can technology help actually to reach the fan. Can you give us some ideas and maybe even some examples of, maybe also historically and also in present, how the installation of sports can actually help to reach a wider audience? Because maybe it's not, going from data to actually delivery, and what our audience following us today can learn from here. Because I think that's a vital aspect to make tech a purposeful tool for marketing.
Yeah, and Kate, I think, laid it out, moving away from the one-size-fits-all avid fan approach to the fluid fan approach, which means we all look different. We're a different shade of gray. We want a personalized experience at the end of the day. That's the consumer, right? So these fans don't, again, you can't lift and shift the same thing and expect that everyone's going to appreciate it or want it. And data unlocks that personalization, unlocks the ability to really understand your fan, whatever they look like, wherever they are. And then using the tech platforms out there, whether that's social platforms, digital platforms, whether that's Kate's search platforms, there's a lot of amazing tools out there now that allow you to create content, distribute content, find the fan where they are, right, and disseminate your product. So the technology is the enabler. The technology is the thing that allows you to understand and deliver. Your product is still sports, but it's not just, as Kate said, on the field. It's the shoulder content. It's the athlete who's increasingly getting more power in this whole ecosystem. So again, the business of sports is changing very rapidly from just let's sell tickets, let's sell sponsorship, let's sell, our media rights in a bundle, and let's go sell some merch. There are a plethora of ways to get to those consumers, but as you mentioned, it has to be personal. Because again, if you think of a fluid fan on a scale, right, they're everywhere in between. And if you want the entire market, you have to, again, be nimble enough and go to where they are, as opposed to the one size fits all approach, which again, I think unlocks what this conversation is about. It's not just your male 15 to 35 that looks this way and lives here. No, it's the global citizen. It's the underserved women out there that have loved sports, but you've just told it the wrong way. You've been focused on one way of selling it. But look at the Olympics. Again, I was an athlete. I spent 8 years on the IOC. More women watch the Olympics in America than men. That's very bizarre if you think about it. The largest property in the world has more female viewers than male viewers. Well, it's because they do it in a different way than just, hey, no, men want statistics. And I'm generalizing, obviously, but the point is there's untapped opportunity. Tech is enabling it. It's almost leveling the playing field. And back to Kate's point, it's about understanding the fan. You have to understand them and then build your pathway to service them, whichever behaviors, whichever way they want to be serviced.
Great. So,
and Robert,
please, Enrique, jump in, please.
No, I just wanted to jump in regarding technology. I mean, so I think that it's important to say, not only linked into the technology when speaking about data, okay, because I think that this is going to transform absolutely the sport, but we need to look into technology, how it's going to improve also people's lives in sport, and how technology is going to improve sports by itself. We have a recent example at Santander. We developed a device that allows blind users to follow the movements of the ball and its trajectory, during. And I think that it's important not to, to use technology or to be able to develop sports and how consumers feel the sports. So not only about data but other uses that are very, very interesting, and they will come in the near future. They will definitely have a very, very good impact on consumers.
Great. Yeah, and if I may just add to that,
please, Charlotte.
I'd just say also it's how do you, we're talking about social good and driving social value. So how do you engage every one of those fans to be doing social good? football is an incredible platform for making change. So as well as utilizing the fan base to support the club and the game, utilize it to drive them in their communities for engagement and purposeful engagement perspectives as well.
Absolutely.
So David just used the tech to interrupt our conversation and let us know that we have to get out of here, but he will tell us all about it. So welcome back.
Oh, thank you. No, I'm just glad I managed to fit on this screen with so many wonderful names. And listen, we were hearing right from the start from Charlotte, just distilling those 4 points about offering value and different types of value and people after different types of value. I think our audience have got a different type of value from you guys here today. So thank you so much for all your input. And yes, the economic return, not so much just about that, the societal return as well. I thought we broached a lot of different topics here, and well done once again, Robert, for guiding the conversation. Hearing about the fluid fans, hearing about the FGR example, Forest Green Rovers here in the UK, with their incredible uniqueness, and interesting actually linking that and Kate's department. One of the major shareholders in FGR is Hector Bellerin, who is a Spain international who plays right now for Arsenal, who is a big YouTuber as well. And he's someone who I think people take a real interest in him because he's not just a footballer. No one really cares about his expected goals per game or whatever. They care about him, his points of view, his political points of view, his standpoints, his fashion. There are lots of other things that make him as a person. And that's, I suppose, what people want to see. They want to dig beneath the surface, and certainly, a lot of Google and YouTube analytics would show that, and it's less about the avid fans, as Kate was saying, and yeah, I think that there's a lot there that can be unpacked even further if we just simply had more time. I feel like I'm saying this every single session, and the storytelling has to evolve as well, and the fans are changing. We need to get with the program, and to Charlotte's point as well, how do companies not get left behind because the consumers are already shifting to the stakeholder economy, and from the guys as well. I mean, I think we've got some great examples of the sorts of things that Grupo Santander are trying to do to also keep with the program, as I said before, and we'll be hearing more a little bit about Field as well. And I know that Enrique, perhaps you would have wanted a little bit more time to talk about that and the device that you guys have pioneered for blind fans, which has been also a winner in our WFS Industry Awards this week. So I think there is so much more to say. Rich, I really appreciate your time as well, just distilling the culture of LAFC and how you stand out, not only in your local marketplace, but on a global scale as well, by standing on your own 2 feet, on your culture, on the movement you're trying to bring about, and your purpose. And I think that hopefully in time, more athletes, more teams, more federations, more governing bodies, etc., will continue to do that as well. But I think, you guys have really set the stall out brilliantly here. Thank you again for all of your input. We really, really do appreciate it. And Robert, again, thank you very much indeed for guiding the conversation. Right, so we've got through 5. We've got 1 left here on day 1 of WFS Live, and we'll be back in just a few minutes' time to conclude with a session on the modern athlete. We're all on the same kind of riffing theme here. We've got variations on that theme throughout today. And of course, as we mentioned, because of our collaboration with Common Goal in particular and other stakeholders as well, and other people have been really helpful with this in terms of Laureus too. But this next panel will be in collaboration with Common Goal, and we'll be featuring 3 of their representatives and some big names amongst them as well. So we'll see you in just a few moments' time.